author of Unclipped Wings. I'm going to read a poem to you today that's not included in Unclipped Wings called 72 Hours of a Real Life. I like to think that a lot can happen in 3 days, and certainly this poem shows that. In July of 2010, I went to the Disability Pride Parade in Chicago. Jody James and I had planned to go before she was killed in a car accident in September, but I decided to go last minute. That weekend of the 2000 Disability Pride Parade was very interesting for me. It was an adventure, and I just wanted to share the following poem with you because I think that you'll find it rather interesting. And also, if you like this poem, you might want to check out my other poem, Empowerment Hell, which is on onecandream.com. In 72 Hours of a Real Life by Ramona Harvey. On Thursday, one of my people got a job at Google, and I drove to Indianapolis to stay in a fancy hotel I could never afford for one night. The pillows were soft, but I wouldn't sleep much, though I know I should have. Instead, I kept myself busy, kept myself from thinking too much. I went on a carriage ride, shared some poetry, and talked about the book, enjoying others' company, all too aware of who was not there, who should have been there as the conversation shifted to presumptive eligibility of nursing home care. 10.5 months since Jody James was killed almost instantly in a car accident. On the day after I last spoke with her, and 5 days before we were to go together to celebrate our birthdays, our existence, that we survived another year, she died, leaving me here to try to understand why we would never go to the aquarium in Chicago together, why so much we had planned for could be lost in an instant. Friday morning I packed my bags, ate breakfast, pointed my car in the direction of Chicago, and drove. The 2010 Disability Pride Parade will happen tomorrow. Jody and I had been planning on going and dragging Jason along so that he could see what it was like and maybe be empowered. Hard to be empowered in Indiana, I am aware.
Budget cuts are a problem, but the corruption is a bigger problem. Indiana's statewide Independent Living Council, IQL, is supposed to be listening to and empowering people with disabilities. Instead, it is a tool of suppression used to maintain a status quo. It serves the state and the corrupted at the expense of people with disabilities it is supposed to represent. People who can't get the accommodations they need or the information they should have, even when they ask for it. Tax dollars spent so that decisions can be made behind closed doors, so a handful of people can profit and protect themselves, even if it means slandering the innocent.
And threatening arrest until people are too afraid to protest for fear of retaliation. This is advocacy in Indiana, or what often passes for it.
What is the mechanism whereby this is happening, and how do we get these years to stop? The only way I know how is through the truth.
I know because I once sat at the table, and would be there now if I had been easy to purchase, and willing to look the other way without any consideration for the laws that were being broken or the liability I had.
I got stuck in a traffic jam and missed my train, or so I thought, but the train was over an hour late. A veteran saw my dog tags and disability and assumes that I am a wounded veteran. He asks about Jody and I tell him. We are a different kind of soldiers, I explained, a little bit about how Jody and I tried to make sure that people with disabilities, wounded soldiers or not, had both voice and choice. I told him that Jody was one of the best advocates Indiana had because she could be diplomatic, but she was not afraid to block a door. I told him that she rolled softly and carried a big stick, and because Jody was not there to finish the joke, I took over her part, because that is what you do when you're the last one standing. I explained she had to carry a stick because her range and motion really sucked, and how else was she going to push elevator buttons?
I did a poor imitation, but he still laughed. I knew Jody would have been pleased because I heard her laughing with us. The man and I shared conversation and a drink as we waited on the platform of the East Chicago train station. We talked about constitutional violations and threats of arrest and what it was like returning home from where he had been, people who had come back wounded, and people who had not come back at all.
It was nice because even though I didn't know the people he spoke of, I could tell they were listening to him, just as Jody was listening in on me. It was nice to be talking to someone with that kind of understanding.
Eventually, I got to Chicago and found my way to Open Mic Night, a precursor to the Disability Pride Parade. There was a lot of talent there. I had not pre-registered, but they were able to fit me in. I read Between Worlds, a prose I wrote in 1990, which I have included in my book, Unclipped Wings. Then I sat back and enjoyed the rest of the show.
After it was over, I sat talking with some friends about the larger-than-life papier-mâché replica of Justin Dart, the one that Yoshiko criticized because it was missing his wedding ring. I never met Justin in person, but I have met Yoshiko. The first time I met her was in Washington, when I was part of the Tennessee contingent, which was in Washington because of Lane versus State of Tennessee. Our paths have crossed several times since then, and I admire her for the phenomenal woman that she is. Justin Dart was instrumental in getting the ADA passed, Americans with Disabilities Act, 20 years ago. Many people were chanting his words of encouragement, "Lead on, lead on." A voice from history that has not been silenced in large part due to those who were left standing, like Yoshiko and others. I leave Open Mic Night and get on the train. I get on the red line and transfer to the purple line. At every stop, someone automatically gets a gap filler, so that I can safely enter and leave the train. I wonder if people realize how amazing that is. On the Indiana train, you are lucky if the conductor knows what a gap filler is. Even if they know what it is, they never know where it is. It is late when I finally get to Evanston. I must have been tired. A street sign caught my attention. I thought it was odd and pointed it out to my companion. "Hey, look at that sign. I've never seen a no sidewalk sign like that before." He laughs a little and corrects me, pointing out what should have been obvious but wasn't. I was too tired and had not been able to catch or compensate fast enough for my secret disability. It wasn't a no sidewalk sign at all, but rather a no bicycles on sidewalk sign. The picture of the crossed out bicycle had been blocked from my view. I was embarrassed and apologized, but I didn't have to. My companion didn't ridicule or assume that I was dumb. I thought to myself, it is nice to be able to openly make that kind of mistake and not be teased or made to feel dumb. My thoughts were interrupted by the rain. Not just a light drizzle, but a heavy downpour. We had to walk to get to where we were going. By the time we reached our destination, I was drenched. I don't understand how the clothes I brought managed to stay mostly dry when they were in the backpack on the back of my wheelchair, but they did. I fell asleep around 2 a.m. I could have marched with one of the fancy boats in the parade, but I didn't. Instead, I decorated the spoke guards of my wheelchair with bright yellow smiley face stickers and attempted to play a purple kazoo until I realized that the only thing that I could play effectively was either Amazing Grace or a funeral dirge. I gave up on the kazoo and simply marched behind a simple banner accompanied by some really cool people. We began chanting, "20 years of the ADA, we are more free every day." I know there is some truth to that, but I also know that the ADA and other laws, even our Constitution, will only protect us as long as we protect it. But it is a celebration, so for the moment, I try and forget all that needs to be done and appreciate all that has been accomplished. Last night's rain has kept many people from the parade, but even with the rain, hundreds of people were there marching towards the plaza, where there would be booths and live entertainment. It was a good turnout, though there were fewer booths than the previous time I had attended, perhaps due to the economy. I saw many familiar faces. I think Jody would have liked it, especially the music. I took the 9:15 train back to Indiana. I planned to leave earlier, but was not able to. It was 10 p.m. and about to rain when I got in my car. I attempted to beat the rain, even accepting help from a stranger to get my wheelchair in the car. I failed in my goal, but it was assured by a friend it would not rain for the duration of my trip back to Evansville. Unfortunately, I would discover my friend was wrong. I drove through some of the worst weather I've driven in for a while. It was dangerous, but I wasn't afraid. I could have handled the rain, but when the car started to hydroplane and the fog made it impossible to see the road, I decided I needed to wait out the storm, out of a sense of needing to be responsible. I called the hotels in Terre Haute, but all the hotels were booked. This did not surprise me or upset me. I just pulled into one of the hotel's parking lots, found a parking spot, and locked the door. I reclined my seat, grabbed my wheelchair cushion to use as a pillow, and made myself as comfortable as possible as I listened to the storm. When the storm subsided a bit, I cracked my window slightly to get some air circulating. It was nice sleeping in my car by choice, not forced necessity. I drifted in and out of sleep, waking occasionally to answer my phone or shift positions. I didn't feel out of place, lost, or drifting. I wasn't afraid. In fact, when people called, I just told them I was where I needed to be.
When the clouds cleared, I looked at the stars. I thought about Jody, my mother, and her cancer, but also about Teresa Torres and Roland Sykes. I wondered if Roland had felt the same awe I felt when I looked at my windshield. Had he felt the same thing when he looked out the window of his bus? The great white cloud? I imagined he did. I thought about the Thanksgiving I shared with Roland before Roland was diagnosed with cancer, about how he had let me record him, sharing his knowledge with Jody and I. I wonder, did he know I would be the last one standing?
When the sun came up, I drove to Vincennes, stopping at Denny's for breakfast and coffee, mostly coffee. I grabbed a pair of shorts and a DAP t-shirt out of my suitcase and changed in the restroom. Sat down at my table and ordered coffee and cream with a breakfast skillet. 4 cups of coffee later, I went to the restroom. Half the people in the restaurant stopped what they were doing to watch me walk on crutches, as if they'd never seen crutches before. It was an odd feeling, but I was back in Indiana. Still, Vincennes does have a Center for Independent Living. I wondered whether they did any awareness activities at all. A little girl one table over was asking questions about my disability. She was still asking the questions when I returned. Her mother tried to get her to stop, as if I had not heard the questions before. Then the girl turns to me and asks, "What are you doing?" I told the girl I was eating breakfast, and then waited for the girl to ask about the crutches. Instead, she informed me I should have had pancakes. I thanked the girl for her advice, and as the mother tried to apologize for her behavior, but I stopped her. "It's okay, I like pancakes." The woman was not talking about pancakes, and we both knew it. She tries again. I stop her. I tell her life is short, enjoy it while you can, motioning to her daughter. I finish a 5th cup of coffee, decide I am alert enough to drive home. I pay the bill and leave. The mother stops me as I'm getting in my car to thank me. I don't ask why. Instead, I hear Jody's voice coming out of my mouth again. I tell her not to mention it, that I'm just here for the party and then get in my car and drive off. I drive directly to the church. The air in the car doesn't work, so by the time I'm there, I'm wishing that it would rain again, so that I would be cooler. Instead, I was wearing my IBelieveOneCanDream.com baseball cap to keep the sweat from dripping in my eyes. I park the car and get out, realizing then that I was about to go to church in an ADAPT t-shirt and a One Can Dream baseball cap. But I decided it was appropriate because it was me. I went in, the pastor asked about my book, we talked. Then the service began with the song Healing Rain, and I almost started laughing, given my adventure the previous night. After the service was over, a member of the church stopped me to tell me what an inspiration I was to her. I almost objected, almost told her that there was no reason to feel inspired simply because she saw me walking on crutches. I almost told her I was just an ordinary person doing ordinary things, but I didn't, because I realized she wasn't making a statement about me. Her statement was about her and about how she felt, not how I wished she felt, or believed she ought to feel. Who was I to judge or try to dictate her feelings anyway? Feeling inspired is a lot like not feeling safe or feeling loved. Another person might agree or disagree with these feelings, but that doesn't mean those feelings don't exist. or should be devalued or the person discounted. So instead I said, I'm glad I could be of service. I made an appearance at the church picnic before going home, but I didn't eat. I wasn't hungry, probably because I should have had pancakes. I was too tired and contemplated to be very sociable, but I did have some very nice conversation, watched some volleyball, and enjoyed the sun, with the full understanding that life is not only short, but what happens is often beyond our control or understanding, that someone always has to be the last one standing, which pretty much sucks. But hey, at least we're here for the party.